Good afternoon, everyone. Lots of news happening. This news cycle is very, very fast. There's lots of things going on. And, well, this is outside of my usual realm, but I did touch on this story. And as it's finished now, I thought I should touch back on this story. So 1460 Seajoy is reporting. After the suspected bodies of two BC manhunt subjects were found, many questions are left unanswered, and some of them could remain a mystery. Yeah, there's a lot of unanswered questions in this one, and I'm not going to get into it. I'm not going to disseminate that at all. But wow, there's a lot that happened with this story and with the media's reporting of it and with everything, man, with everything. Lots going on. Elizabeth May had an announcement. Green Party had an announcement in Nanaimo, which is kind of funny considering the announcement. CBC is reporting. Green Party unveils plan to transition oil and gas workers to renewable energy jobs. Leader Elizabeth May says workers should not fear for the future as she ramps up pre-election campaign. Green Party leader Elizabeth May has unveiled a multi-pronged plan to help workers in the gas and oil sector transition to a renewable energy economy, working to allay fears that her climate action plan would bleed jobs as she ramps up pre-election campaign efforts. The Green Worker Transition Plan, which includes skills retraining programs and massive retrofit and cleanup projects designed to create employment, fleshes out details from the Green Party's climate action plan called Mission Possible, that was released in May. Making the announcement in Vancouver on Wednesday, May said she understands the anxiety among workers in the fossil fuel industry and wants to take an all-hands-on-deck approach to transform Canada's economy. Quote, "It's critical that workers in fossil fuel industries and fossil fuel-dependent communities not fear for their future," she said. "We are not at war with fossil fuel workers. We are not at all willing to leave any part of Canada or any community behind." I scroll down just a little bit. Fresh off a 30-community tour of Canadian towns and cities, May, MP for the BC riding of Saugeen Gulf, I've said that wrong, but I apologize, Islands, is hoping to build momentum with the federal election just over 10 weeks away. Asked why she made today's announcement in Vancouver rather than in Alberta, where some communities rely on oil industries for jobs, May said it was only a physical reality. She and a slate of candidates were in the BC city. She said she was not avoiding Calgary or Edmonton, noting she had visited both cities during her recent tour, which also took her to Collingwood, Guelph, Barrie in Ontario, as well as Avalon region in Newfoundland and Labrador, and Yellowknife. May said she plans to conduct a national campaign tour that will rely on commercial flights with carbon offsets and electric vehicles on the ground. A party official said the leaders will also use buses, trains, and biodiesel vehicles to limit the campaign's carbon footprint. "I'll be on the road a lot and not necessarily home in my own riding as much as I would like," she said. May said the Green Party is doing, quote, "fantastically well and ahead of some of the other parties in nominating candidates. There are now 238 candidates nominated with another 100 to go to reach a full roster." Now, I just want to pause here. Have you ever, pulled a punch? Not punched somebody right as hard as you meant to, right? Pulled a punch? That's what pulling a punch in journalism looks like. Some other parties, we're like a couple of weeks away from the election. Some other parties, I can guarantee you. Well, hold on. Let's look at the numbers. Some other parties. What other parties are under 238 candidates? Which other parties? Which ones? Oh, thank you, Mr. Bernier. I remember that you tweeted this number out. And so the Conservatives have 323 nominated candidates. And this is from August 1st. It's now August 8th. So a full week later, okay? 323 for the Conservatives, 309 for the People's Party of Canada, 230 for the Liberals, 226 for the Greens, which sounds about right, and 141 for the NDP. So it's interesting to me that that's not news, because 141 for the NDP is a colossal collapse. Like in 2015, there wasn't a question of if they were going to field a candidate in every riding in the country. At this point in time, that's looking shaky. And the Liberals having 230 candidates at this point. I think they have 277 seats in the House. 277, I think, is the number that's sticking in my head. I could be wrong, and I'm not going to check right now. But it seems like at least some of those people, when's the nomination campaign, or when's the nomination meeting for those people? When are those candidates going to, pick up their mantle and say, "Yep, we agree with what's happening"? That seems like a low number to me. But I can guarantee you, if Mr. Bernier at this point in time had 141, every talking head would express concern about that. Every single one. because that's a concerning number. And, you know, some other more, there are more candidates with some other, well ahead of some other parties. Yeah, some other parties like the NDP, which traditionally, yeah, that's a big throwing the punch, or not throwing the punch, pulling the punch. Anyway, back to the article. Quick aside, everyone. Platform priorities. Along with climate action, she said the key platform priorities will be democratic reform, pharmacare, and real conciliation with Indigenous people. The Green Party plan to transition fossil fuel workers includes investing in retraining and apprenticeship programs to refocus the skills of industrial trade workers for jobs in the renewable energy sector, start a massive cleanup of orphaned oil wells, some of which can be transformed into producing geothermal energy. Yeah, great. Create a national program to retrofit all buildings to optimum energy efficiency. Establish a transition framework to factor in the unique resources and circumstances of each province. From partnerships with Indigenous people to ramp up renewable energy development. Form partnerships with Indigenous people to ramp up renewable energy development in First Nations communities on Indigenous lands. May said Canada has not done well in transitioning workers in the past, pointing to the loss of thousands of jobs in Atlantic Canada due to the cod moratorium and in Quebec with the shutdown of the asbestos industry. She said the task force released earlier this year on a just transition for Canadian coal plant workers sets a new standard, recommending locally driven transition centers, a pension bridging program, and funding for skills retraining. The Green Plan would adopt all 10 recommendations from the task force and apply them to other sectors impacted by moving off fossil fuels. May said the party's plan for retrofitting buildings would create 4 million jobs for tradespeople such as carpenters, electricians, and plumbers, and said there is an immense economic opportunity in moving to green jobs. Many people think that when we talk about climate emergency, we're hoping to have people be afraid. People are already afraid. We want to give them hope and the tools to know that their future is secure. The Green Party launched its Mission Possible platform in May. It aims to tackle climate change by holding global average temperatures to no more than 1.5 degrees Celsius above what it was before the Industrial Revolution. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh released his environmental plan in May, promising to spend $15 billion to create about 300,000 green jobs and ban single-use plastics by 2022. Conservative leader Andrew Scheer released his plan in June, pledging to meet Canada's emissions reduction target by setting strict standards for major greenhouse gas emitters while eliminating the current federal carbon tax program brought in by the Liberal government. And Mr. Scheer has agreed that what he's proposing is a tax, by another name, but it's still a tax. So I found it interesting that the other parties were compared so quickly here, and I've got some questions about these jobs. Like, when you're replacing oil and gas jobs bring money into the country. When you spend $15 billion, $300 million was an incorrect amount, $15 billion to create about 300,000 jobs. Well, that's not the function of the oil jobs. The oil jobs create their own wealth. It's not government creating the wealth, right? So that's a strange idea to be putting forward. I think that's fundamentally a very flawed way to be fixing this problem. And Ms. May's plan talks about the failures of retraining employers when other industries moved on or were stopped by whatever government actions or whatever happened in the history of these industries, right? We've had mass shifts in the past, and those have been handled poorly. And Miss May seems to be doubling down on saying, yeah, but we're going to do it right this time, without really giving any clear specifics other than saying we're going to throw money at it, right? But the money doesn't always help, because it's not always appropriate to train a coal miner to be a computer programmer or an office worker or any of those things, right? It just doesn't work. And similarly, somebody who drives truck or is a delivery person or somebody who is making a full-time position out of minimum wage employment may not take to the retraining that you want to provide. And it has to be noted. It has to be noted. We need to have good paying jobs that everyone has access to, and not through subsidy, right? Not through subsidy. And these jobs don't solve that problem. Fundamentally, they don't. There's a big hole in the plan, and the hole is when you eliminate the oil and gas industry, you're eliminating a huge, huge source of wealth for the country. If we're not developing and those resources fundamentally, and Justin Trudeau is on record as saying Canada's future is with oil and gas, period, for the foreseeable future. He said that in Cambridge. I can have the, hold on a second. This took far longer than I thought it would take. Here it is.
Need to continue to develop our fossil fuels responsibly. We need to get them to markets other than the United States. Right now, 99% of all of our...
And there's other time index. The time index I'm thinking of is, he says, we'll be reliant on oil and gas for a long time, essentially. And that's not this one, but I just don't have time to find it. So this is the video. This is approximately when he's talking about climate change. I think it might be a few minutes later, but I just don't have time to find it, so I apologize. But I'll provide the link. You guys have a watch. This was in February or earlier this year anyway. Oh, April, not February, April. Earlier this year at St. Benedict High School, my old stomping grounds. Okay, and so there are lots of holes in this policy. It doesn't fundamentally solve the same problem that the oil and gas industry solves. And the oil and gas industry solves a bunch of problems. There's hard labor that needs work, and that's lower skill work. And that is accessible to people with high school diplomas, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And the green jobs that are being proposed, the carpentry, et cetera, carpentry, electrician, plumber, those are skilled jobs. Right? And yeah, there are some certain other jobs that may fill in the gaps, but they're not nearly as well paid as working on the rigs or working in the oil mines or in the oil fields, right? Like I understand the push. I understand what Ms. May is trying to say, but the policy upon examination doesn't solve the same problem. It's like wallpapering over something that you don't want to talk about, right? Which it seems like every Canadian politician is doing with all of the policies that are coming out. Okay, and this video has taken a lot longer than it may seem in watching, but the last bit of news is this bit of news. And for a couple of days, people have been messaging me with, have you heard Mr. Bernier is being excluded from the debates? And I said, well, that was something that was passed in October. Like the rules that they were talking about, even the report that Mr. Ezra Klein did for the Rebel the other day when he was talking about how they're going to exclude Max from the debates, there wasn't anything new there. I reported on that in November when they came out with these rules. And I said, well, I don't like it, but I mean, they're standard rules, and they have a right, they being the Liberals, have a right to change it the way they want, whatever. Because they do. They're a majority government. They can do that. That's it. That's how our system works. Right. So, and right or wrong, that's how our system works. And I'm not saying I agree with it. I'm saying they can do it. So just make sure there's a distinction there. So the Munk debate has put this out, and they say, quote, add your voice to the Munk debate's call for a leaders' debate on foreign policy. Visit our website, and they've got a link, to sign a petition calling for the debate and email the leaders to participate. More debates equals more democracy. And they've got hashtag CanadaPoly, CanPoly. That's like if you're interested in Canadian politics, it's a hashtag. It's not me. They're not saying, hey, Mark. No, CanadaPoly. Just make sure other people don't confuse that. I've had some people, I think, confuse that. And they hashtag the CPC and the LPC, the CPC, the NDP, and the GPC, the Green Party. And I thought it was kind of funny and purposeful that PPC was not included in this list. And it really should be when you look at the number of candidates. It really should be, right? It really should be. Because there's other metrics to measure the popularity of a party. And I've heard reports that polls don't even offer PPC as an option. So people just hang up. And then, well, you've got your poll, right? 1,000 people who don't know about Maxime Bernier and don't know about the party and will vote one of those 4 legacy parties, right? That's what's happening. That's part of it. And I have heard reports of this. I'm not trying to make news. I don't have concrete evidence or proof, but I've heard multiple reports of this happening. And I want people to be aware of this. They're using the low polling numbers to justify not inviting Mr. Bernier to the debates. And the way they're getting the low polling numbers is by not including Mr. Bernier in the selection. So that's interesting. Mr. Bernier tweets, hey, Munk debate, it's not just more debates with everyone mostly agreeing on everything that foster democracy. It's real debates with all viewpoints being represented. Why aren't you inviting me? I'm the only one with a different foreign policy. That's true. And as we just looked, in depth at. He's also the only one with a different plan for the environment and a different plan for pipelines and a different plan for a lot of the things that Justin Trudeau has done. And these other three parties are standing in line to offer more of the same of. It's interesting. It's interesting that they don't want him on that stage. Not even one little bit. Not one little bit. So if that's important to you, if democracy is important to you, speak up. Weigh in. I tweeted at them. I'm sure you could too. And if not, call them or write a letter. That's probably more effective than tweeting at them, actually, come to think of it. So maybe do that. And think, if there's a time to fight, when would that be? A couple of months before the election, when they're actively trying to remove somebody who's trying to put a foreign policy forward that speaks for Canadians? More than that, regardless of whether you agree or disagree, shouldn't everyone have the right to be, all the leaders have a right to be on the debate stage? Right? No? Yes? Maybe, maybe not. Could be a case made. However, the United States does Democratic primary debates with 17 people on the stage. Maybe that's unwieldy. 11 on the stage, maybe still unwieldy, right? Why not 2 at a time? We could have a round robin debate. I'm sure more conversation is what people want, but it seems like we're going to get less and a very, very slimmed down version of even what we had in 2015. So very interesting to watch. And should all the leaders, and I mean all the leaders, right? Should they all be included? Should the litmus test for being included in the debate being successfully registering your party and having an EDA, an EDA in every riding, or not an EDA in every riding, but certain other elements, right? The Liberal Party tried to fix that problem with their rules. And now the rules are kicking in and eliminating at least one leader, right? And so fundamentally, should everyone be invited? What should be the bar, right? I don't agree with Mr. Bernier being removed from this. I think there's more going on than just low polling numbers, which I've just explained why I think that. And so it's worth the debate. It's worth the conversation, right? What should the litmus test be? How popular should you be before you're welcome on the stage? Because I'm sure that people disagree. I'm sure that there'll be disagreement, and that's fine. Let's talk about it. I'm interested. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, everybody. Check out the peoplespartyofcanada.ca and have a wonderful, wonderful day.